Some aircraft in World War II were not destroyed by enemy fire but by their own fatal design flaws. Sitting inside these machines often meant zero chance of survival, where one small mistake could burn an entire crew alive or trap them inside their own aircraft. These are the deadliest aircraft of World War II, machines that killed more of their own crews than their enemies. World War II is often remembered as a story of heroism, strategy, and victory. But behind those victories was a darker reality: technical failure. Thousands of aircraft never made it to the battlefield. Some crashed during training missions. Others failed mechanically while still in the air. And many were destroyed because of flaws built directly into their design. When we use the word deadliest aircraft, it does not always mean dangerous to the enemy. Sometimes it means fatal to the crew flying inside. These were aircraft where survival was not guaranteed by skill, but by luck. Machines where a single malfunction could turn a routine mission into a death sentence. And one of the most feared examples of this was the Me-163 Comet. Me-163 Comet, the acid dissolver. The Me-163 Comet was the world's first operational rocket-powered fighter aircraft. Its greatest strength was speed. The aircraft could climb faster than any fighter of its time, making it ideal for intercepting Allied bombers at high altitude. But behind this impressive performance was a deadly secret: its fuel system. The Me-163 used two chemicals known as T-Stoff and C-Stoff. These substances were not only explosive, they were extremely corrosive. If the fuel came into contact with human skin, it immediately began to dissolve tissue. And this is where the horror began. Landing was the most dangerous phase of operating the Me-163. Unlike conventional aircraft, it did not land on wheels. Instead, it used a detachable dolly for takeoff and a skid system for landing. If the landing was even slightly rough, the fuel tanks could rupture, and when those tanks burst, corrosive fuel spilled into the cockpit. German records indicate that several pilots died not from explosions, but from fuel leaks that entered the cockpit. They were not killed instantly. They were killed slowly, by chemical burns that melted through protective gear and skin. The Me-163 was incredibly fast, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Many German pilots feared flying it, because every landing carried the risk of a fatal mistake. Speed gave it power, but safety was never guaranteed. B-29 Superfortress. The magnesium fires. If the Me-6-3 represented speed, the B-29 Superfortress represented technological power. This bomber was one of the most advanced aircraft of World War II. It featured pressurized cabins, long-range capability, and heavy bomb loads. It was considered a major step forward in aviation engineering, but inside this advanced machine was a dangerous weakness: its engines. The B-29 used Wright R-3350 duplex Cyclone engines, which were powerful but highly unreliable in early production models. These engines frequently overheated, and when overheating occurred, engine fires followed. But the danger didn't stop there. The wings of the aircraft contained magnesium components, a material that burns intensely once ignited. Magnesium fires are extremely difficult to extinguish, especially in mid-air. That meant if an engine caught fire, the wing could ignite. And once the wing ignited, the structure of the aircraft began to fail. In several documented cases, pilots did not even realize a fire had started until it was too late. By the time the crew noticed the flames, the wing had already weakened, and sometimes the engine, or even the entire wing, separated from the aircraft. When that happened, there was no recovery. The aircraft broke apart in mid-air. Entire crews were lost, not because of enemy attack, but because of internal failure. B-24 Liberator, the one-way exit. The B-24 Liberator was one of the most widely used bombers of World War II. It had excellent range and could carry heavy payloads over long distances. On paper, it was an efficient and powerful aircraft, but its design included a dangerous structural weakness: the Davis wing. This wing design improved aerodynamic efficiency, allowing the aircraft to fly longer distances using less fuel. But the design also made the aircraft vulnerable. Even minor damage to the wing could cause a loss of control, and when the aircraft entered a spin, the real danger began. The emergency escape system. The B-24 had narrow internal passageways. Crew members had to move through tight spaces to reach the exit. If the aircraft began spinning, centrifugal force pushed the crew violently against the walls of the aircraft. In those conditions, reaching the exit door became nearly impossible. Many crew members remained trapped inside the aircraft. They had parachutes, they had training, but they could not physically reach the exit. For this reason, many pilots and crew members unofficially referred to the B-24 as a flying coffin. Not because it always failed, but because when it did fail, escape was rarely possible. It was an aircraft that allowed entry, but did not always allow exit. TBF Avenger, the carbon monoxide trap. The TBF Avenger was a torpedo bomber widely used in naval warfare. It was considered powerful, durable, and effective, but early production versions contained a hidden flaw, one that could not be seen or detected easily. Engine exhaust fumes. A ventilation flaw allowed exhaust gases to leak into the cockpit. These gases contained carbon monoxide, a colorless and odorless gas that is extremely dangerous to humans. The most dangerous aspect of carbon monoxide is that it cannot be detected by smell. Pilots did not realize they were inhaling poison. Carbon monoxide gradually replaces oxygen in the bloodstream. As oxygen levels drop, the human brain begins to shut down. Pilots became dizzy, then confused, and eventually unconscious. Once the pilot lost consciousness, the aircraft lost control. The result was predictable. Aircraft crashed into the ocean without warning. No enemy fire, no visible damage, just a silent gas slowly removing oxygen from the body. By the time engineers discovered the cause of these crashes, several pilots had already lost their lives, not in combat, but inside their own aircraft. During World War II, aviation technology advanced at an extraordinary pace. New aircraft were designed quickly, production moved rapidly, testing time was limited, and safety was often compromised. Every crash, every fire, and every fatal malfunction forced engineers to learn painful lessons. These accidents were not meaningless. They led to improvements in aircraft design. Fuel systems became safer. Escape mechanisms were redesigned. Cockpit safety standards were strengthened. Modern aviation safety exists today because of these failures. Because history proved one harsh truth: technology improves through mistakes. And sometimes, those mistakes cost lives. In the end, these aircraft were not just machines. They were reminders of design errors, paid for with the lives of thousands of men who trusted their aircraft to bring them home.